Alright, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that is Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, that really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, that just helps us out even more. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. You're an absolute legend to us. All right, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Gamley. How's it going, Lewis?
Going very well, Mark, I think. How are you getting on?
You think?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I had to pause and think, and it was like, yeah, things are fine, I think.
All right, well, that's good. Well, things are also fine with me, which is great. Lewis, what have you been playing this week?
Just more Elden Ring, Mark. Bit of progress.
Of course it is. Bit of progress, indeed.
Well, I think so. I mean, I really rattled through the capital section. I think I skipped quite a lot of content and just kind of mainlined it, rushed through both bosses, kind of slaughtered them with ease. I guess I'm at that point now where my build is a bit higher than what I need to be on for the area that I'm in, or it was at that point at least. So scooted through that, and now I've explored the vast majority of the mountaintop of the giants, which is the kind of next main section after that. I've only got a wee bit at the end of that to do a couple of bosses, and then I'm moving on from there. So I gather I'm heading towards late game, or I'm in the late game now. It still feels like there's tons of stuff ahead of me.
I would say that once you've got to the mountaintop of the giants, I think that's late game. I think that's like official start of late game at that point.
It certainly feels like it's changed a bit in terms of not only the world design and that kind of thing, but also the strength of the enemies. Even normal enemies are pretty challenging at times. I guess my point this week, as I've been trying to think of something fresh to say each time, it's just that, yeah, like in an attempt to kind of just get this knocked out now and get to the end, while still seeing as much of the kind of main content or the kind of highlights, I suppose, I just feel like I'm skipping loads of stuff. I've just stopped doing catacombs and tombs altogether, just about, unless I know that there's something really important or worth getting within them. What I'm trying to do essentially is unlock the grace sites as I go, so that I can always fast travel around later if I feel like I want to or need to, because I'm a bit worried doing this is going to affect my leveling, and I won't quite be as powerful by the end game as I would like to be.
I'll just jump in here, man. You'll be fine. Don't worry about
well,
that.
hopefully. I mean, I'm well over level 100 now. Yeah, it's great, but I am at that point, and it's probably just that I've been playing it for so long that I'm kind of like, I just want to get this to the end now.
Yeah.
I think that's a shame. It's a shame to feel like that. In hindsight, I wish that I had broken it up a bit more the way I had said that I would, and, you know, would probably be playing it all year in that scenario. It might have all still felt quite fresh, whereas at the moment I'm just like, okay, it's another dungeon, just keep going kind of thing, and that's not really how I wanted to experience it by the end, you know.
No, I think that once you've finished it, we need to do a topic of the week just on our experience of playing Elden Ring. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I am not going to lie to you that me and Lewis speak about Elden Ring, even still, for 40 minutes before we start recording or doing the rundown of the show or doing anything. So, yeah, I think that we have some things to say about the game. Again, it's a fantastic game. I don't want there to be any ambiguity there, really, but you are now at the section where I was like, this is a real slog for me. And from this point on, to be honest with you, sorry to break the bad news to you, but it just continued being a slog, potentially getting worse as the playthrough went on. I was just like, I want this to be finished 10 hours ago. Do you know what I mean?
It feels like it could have used a bit of an edit by this point, or that more of the content felt genuinely optional rather than like a really good thing that you're choosing not to do kind of thing. But, you know, that is what it is. It's an incredible game. It's an astonishing achievement, but yeah, that doesn't make it absolutely flawless, because no game is.
Certainly not in this case, I have to say.
What have you been playing, Mike?
Still Gears Tactics for me, man. I don't have too much to add. In reality, this game sort of is the same game. Still, it just gets slightly more difficult as levels move on. Do you know what I mean? All in all, I've got to say, it's a pretty great turn-based strategy game. I don't think the story's up to much, but at the same time, like, who fucking cares in this style of game? Do you know what I mean? It's all about the gameplay, and I think that the gameplay is complex enough and gives you enough options, like, between your different classes and their subsequent different skill trees. It's pretty versatile, you know what I mean? If you wanted to play this game very differently to how I've played through it, you probably could do that, and even even within the sort of turn-based system, I suppose, like it can still feel quite dynamic because of the different abilities you've chosen to give your recruits, which is good. Like, it's all you're really asking for from this style of game, do you know what I mean? But yeah, not too much to say. It kind of is what it is, in my opinion. One nitpick is that quite a lot of the times in some of the missions, they make you go back to like an extraction point, which is fine, which all sounds fine, except for when you've killed all the enemies, and then you have to then spend 2 turns moving 4 or 5 characters to this extraction point. It's just just finish the level, game. Why are you making me do this? And then after a certain point as well, like it'll spawn in more enemies, as if it's going like, oh, nudge, nudge, if you don't hurry up, we'll start attacking you again. But it's like, who's fucking about with this? Like, I'm just trying to get to this extraction point. The only reason that you've got the ability to spawn more enemies is because one of my guys is parked miles away because he's a sniper and he has to wait 3 turns to fucking get there. Apart from that, it's fine though. Apart from that,
I know that frustration a bit. There was definitely a wee bit of that in Chimera Squad, XCOM Chimera Squad. Yeah, you were trying to get out of a level, or you were just trying to finish off their last guy, but it took too long for whatever reason, and then reinforcements turn up when you've basically already cleared the level. That's super frustrating. But yeah, it should be, if there's not a kind of story reason to have to get to an extraction point, or another kind of event that would trigger in the attempt, then that just feels like it should end as soon as you've killed, your objective should be either escape alive or kill everyone, I mean, if you have to retreat, but you've achieved the other objectives kind of thing.
Yeah, if you have to get to an extraction point, or you like could get to the extraction point, like just ignoring the enemies in some capacity, but that's not really possible. Like, you have to clear the map before you get to the extraction point. So yeah, just end the fucking level, game. I don't know why you're doing this to me. I do have to say another thing, Liz. I've been called out by a listener. Is John from Gaming in the Wild, who seems like a lovely guy, and this is not me having a go at him slightly. He seems like a very nice man. And he has called me out on saying Games Pass and not Game Pass, which he is 100% correct about. I do that all the fucking time. I am fully aware that I do that, and yet my dumb fucking mouth says it anyway, every single time. However, I am all about self-improvement here, ladies and gentlemen.
That's a new one.
Shut up. So I will endeavour to say Game Pass correctly going out, and I am tasking Lewis Camley to pull me up anytime I say it incorrectly. Okay. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
You always like pointing out my flaws, Lewis.
Exactly, so. Yeah, that's my favourite hobby.
And I will promise here and now that I will not edit out anytime Lewis is correct me, so everyone will know when I'm fucked up. Right?
Oh, great. This is going to be fun. Yeah, I'll get myself a little Games Pass klaxon for every time you say it.
Oh, God. Also, Lewis, sometimes I say NTFs rather than NFTs, despite the fact I know that is wrong, and that might be relevant when we go into the news.
Very good.
Segue like a fucking champion. All right, Lewis, news item number 1. And because we live in a hellscape, the first NFT games console has been announced, Lewis. The new console is aimed at Web3 gaming and has been announced by Polyum and is called the Polyum 1. They claim that it is the world's first multi-chain gaming console, meaning that it is capable of running games built on different blockchains. They also claim that it is capable of running high-performance games at 8K HDR, 120 FPS and ray tracing. And I'm just going to jump in right immediately here, Lewis, and call that bullshit, because as far as I'm aware, the current gen consoles haven't actually managed that yet, like running 8K HDR, 120 frames per second with ray tracing. I'm pretty confident both Sony and Microsoft, both huge multinational companies, have not yet managed that on their consoles yet. And the concept art for this blockchain gaming console shows it like a very slightly bigger footprint than the controller that they give you with it. It looks like maybe 3 or 4 games stacked high, like that's the sort of volume of the box that they showed, which is really tiny compared to the current gen consoles. So I'm literally not sure that they have the physical space for the components that they would require to run a game at that quality. So I'm calling bullshit on that immediately, and that will be the first of many things that I'm calling bullshit in this list. Oh, God. They have also claimed that they are planning for a Q3 2024 release. This despite also saying that only 4 people are working on this, and that they don't have a functioning prototype as of yet because they are expecting that to be ready in November. So they seem to be expecting, Lewis, to go from having their prototype functional to having it in their consumers' hands in 2 years. I would say that that is extremely ambitious, if not entirely impossible for a team of 4 people. To give you an idea, the Playdate, you know, the wee handheld games console thing with the crank, looks really cool. I definitely want one. That took 3 years to start shipping after they announced the project, which is a way less ambitious project than what these people are talking about. Like, what they're talking about is insane. And I bet that at that announcement of the Playdate, they, one, already had a working prototype at the time of that announcement and had a team that was at least 10 times bigger. At least 10 times bigger. Because they'll have, again, 4 people, allegedly. And the kicker here is, of course, Lewis, is that if you want to pre-order, you have to buy the PlayAlong Pass to have the privilege of pre-ordering this console, which is, of course, an NFT minted on the Ethereum network, of which there will only be 10,000. Lewis, why? Why would you ever have to buy an NFT to pre-order a console? And I think that is getting to what the crux of this is, which is that it is a fucking scam. It's a fucking NFT scam like all the rest of them. And it seems to be everything associated with blockchain these days. Because basically, I don't think that this console is ever going to see the light of day. I don't think this console will ever actually get made in a manufacturing capacity that is capable of delivering it to people around the world. Do you know what I mean? And even if it does, I would say that it would be a highly compromised version of whatever they're promising right now. And when it comes out and you've already paid for your NFT, you're not going to be able to get your money back. Like, if it doesn't turn up, you're not going to be able to get your money back. If it's just an utter piece of shit, it's just a plastic box that doesn't do it very much, you're not going to be able to get your money back. And I think that really is the point here, right? The point is to sell those 10,000 NFTs. It's not to make a fucking console. Oh, God. This also comes in a month where NFT sales are the lowest that they've been in a year. They're down to 1 billion, which is already fucking way too many. But that's down from 12.6 billion, which is a colossal drop in a year in reality. They have obviously responded to this in the typical blockchain bro sort of way by accusing everyone of FUD, which is an acronym, Lewis, which stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. 3 things which you should definitely fucking have when it comes to this console. But that's basically used as like a catch-all response from crypto enthusiasts to any sort of criticism of the blockchain, it seems, and it's just a phrase that they spout instead of actually acknowledging or dealing with any criticism. It's sort of the crypto equivalent of calling everyone who criticises you a hater, which is something that they also do on top of this. Anyway, I hope that anyone listening to this has no interest in this whatsoever. And please, 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 oh my God, do not give these people any fucking money. Even if you're getting an NFT. Because as we know, if you're getting an NFT in return for your money, Lewis, you're getting nothing in return for your money.
Nothing whatsoever. You're certainly not getting that games console, that's for damn sure.
Lewis, see if this turns out to exist. Okay, see if this turns out to exist in the way that they say that it will, and it will run 8K, HDR, 120 frames per second. I will buy one. Despite how principally against NFTs I am, I will fucking buy one if this actually turns out to be the console that they promised that it is.
I mean, there's just not a chance. It's not even...
Exactly, which is why I've said that.
Yeah, it's tragic. I mean, it's like you say, they are just selling NFTs here. That's all this is. They are selling you that token that you're using to pre-order the console, and maybe eventually you'll end up getting an NFT of the console itself, because that's just what they do in this space.
NFTs on NFTs,
yeah,
man.
It's just a grift that keeps coming. You know, there's, like you say, the market collapse really of the NFT scam over the last few months, and it's been remarkable to witness. It just has to evolve now. So now it's going to be this physical object that they'll sell you, and that will unlock this magical realm of Web3 games, the blockchain games that no one is asking for. There's not been a single good example of these yet, and when people do try and tell you they've got a great version of it, a great example of it is routinely and obviously terrible every time. They look ridiculous. They're not proper games. It's the whole thing is just built on making money. And I'm sure there'll be people listening out there. I mean, I don't know why you would still be listening to us, really, if you're into this, because we criticise it on the regular, but there's bound to be some people out there who still think that this blockchain gaming thing is going to take off. I think that the comparison to Playdate that you make is interesting in that context, because I would bet not only did they have a prototype and a plan and a team and all that stuff.
Yeah, all the shit you need to get something to manufacture.
I bet they had also already started approaching developers and publishers to say, like, will you get behind this at all? Like, there's no point in us putting this out if no one's going to do anything for it.
But they've promised there will be games. Don't you believe them? for this fictional console.
These games, they just don't exist and they're not any good. And so, the whole thing is ridiculous. They also got called out for basically stealing the GameCube's logo, and they had
I forgot you mentioned that.
Yeah,
I was so wrapped up in all the other bullshit that I forgot that they nicked the GameCube's logo.
Which is, pretty remarkable in itself. Like, do they not remember the GameCube? Are they that young? Or did they think they would get away with it in this space that is absolutely concerned with its history? It just doesn't make any sense. They're at it. This will never happen. Don't give them any money. Again, let's just keep allowing them to fall into irrelevance. They can trade this shit with each other. Who cares? But keep it away from the rest of us.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I think I cannot underline this point enough. Do not give these people any money. Please, please, please do not give these people any money. This console, I firmly believe this console will never exist. And if it does, it will be nothing like what they promised. Alright, loose news item number 2. And speaking of terrible shit in the video games industry, microtransactions and loot boxes. Hooray! I can tell that this is going to be a real cheery episode, Liz. Although, perhaps this is actually good news on the loot box front. It seems like 6 political parties in the Netherlands have jointly said that loot boxes are gambling, which obviously they are. It's just nice to see another government agreeing with that. And this also comes a month after 20 consumer groups from 18 European countries have basically lended their support to a report which was calling loot boxes predatory and fostering addictions, which obviously they do, and basically trying to ban them from video games. This report was led by the Norwegian Consumer Group, but has now got just a ton of support from all around Europe. This also makes the second country to ban loot boxes outright. Belgium banned loot boxes in 2019, meaning that games either had to remove loot boxes entirely or they could not be sold in the country. This resulted in EA no longer being able to sell FIFA points in Belgium, but it also meant that Diablo Immortals, which only recently came out, couldn't be sold in Belgium, and it also won't be sold in the Netherlands either. Diablo Immortal, by the way, is also apparently making $1 million a day, Lewis, on microtransactions and loot boxes. I mean, this is good news, I suppose. I'm glad that these consumer groups are getting behind this report, which, as I said, was headed by the Norwegian Consumer Commission. I wish the UK was part of this, but perhaps unsurprisingly it is not. I think with Belgium and even the Netherlands banning loot boxes, which is great by the way, but I think people like EA and Activision are probably looking at that and going sort of like, right, okay, whatever. But if half of Europe says, no, this is bullshit and we are going to ban you from doing this in our countries, surely at that point people like EA and Activision have to set up and notice. Surely, Liz.
You would hope so, but it will really take bans in large swathes of a major continent, I think, before they will start paying attention to that. Because like you say, the populations of Belgium and the Netherlands is pretty minuscule, and it's only going to be a portion of that is affected by this, you know what I mean? So I don't think this is going to change anything, but it is good news, and we should mention it because of that. This is lawmakers taking action. The fact that 6 political parties, I didn't look into what the kind of political persuasion of each was or how many of the parliament that includes, but 6 political parties coming together on a single issue is pretty uncommon.
I think this was sort of like being posited as like bipartisan, so sort of both sides of the political aisle, for lack of a better term. However that 6 is cut up, we're saying, no, we all agree this is bullshit.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that is the case, because then that's covering all angles. And if that kind of law is being backed by these consumer research groups that are finding evidence that says people aren't up for this, that people are against this, hopefully that will start to see some changes rolled out. But it's money talks, and all of these big companies will be very persuasive about why it's not really gambling, or they'll make subtle small changes that will help them kind of access loopholes and stuff like that. It's not over by a long shot, but it will be interesting to see what happens next, certainly in those 2 countries that have kind of taken this action already, and what we can all learn from it, and maybe what pressure we can put on governments to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I agree. It is basically good news. I don't think that the fight against loot boxes specifically is over by any stretch of the imagination, because as you said, too many people are making too much money from them. And yes, I would expect them to all start lobbying very hard and telling us why, these are just surprise mechanics and not gambling or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Just all that bullshit will start all over again, Liz. All over again.
And the thing, we can't forget, you just said Diablo Immortals is making $1 million a day or whatever. Like, people want this. People are paying for this stuff, and that is probably coming largely from a position of ignorance in certain quarters, and also a lot of people that just think, well, I love this game and that's that. And so
I'm not sure that that's entirely entirely true, if I'm totally honest with you. I think the game forces you into an alley where you have to pay money to progress in a meaningful, timely way. I will say, do you know what I mean? I don't think anyone wants to be paying additional money for their games.
No, but that's what I mean. Like, people are playing the game though, and they are going through with that, right? You don't have to play. You could just completely reject it. So people are still, as we've seen with FIFA Ultimate Team and all these things, they encounter that paywall and they move beyond it. And for some people, that'll be because they don't pay attention to the kinds of conversations that we have. So they're just picking up a game with a name on it that they like and they're paying through it. But plenty of people will be aware and they will probably oppose microtransactions but still go through with it. And so there's work to be done there, and a sort of like gamer solidarity against this stuff still as well, even at this point where governments are starting to act, because someone is spending $1 million a day on Diablo Immortals despite it being absolutely horrendously predatory, and critics and users alike are saying that. So they're still raking it in. Someone is giving them that money, and there's a bit of education work to be done there as well, I think.
Yeah, certainly couldn't hurt, man. I mean, anything to get less loot boxes and predatory microtransactions into video games, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Alright, list news item number 3. Rockstar have apparently shelved remakes of Red Dead Redemption and GTA 4 following a poor reception from the GTA Trilogy remakes. This was initially leaked by a GTA insider called Tez, who's apparently a reliable source for these sorts of things, but has subsequently been reaffirmed by Kotaku's sources as well. Apparently, these remakes could resurface as well at some point in the future after the release of GTA 6, which is where all their resources are now going. Rockstar have obviously confirmed that they are working on GTA 6 now, although I don't think that was ever really in doubt for very long, to be honest with you, Lewis. If you don't remember, Grand Theft Auto The Trilogy, the Definitive Edition, and yes, that is the correct title for that game, released in an absolute mess. I mean, it was a disaster. And even beyond the bugs, it just looked absolutely awful and stripped any sense of atmosphere or, I don't know, just the soul out of it. It felt like, do you know what I mean? They were truly, truly awful remakes. But Liz, I don't really know. What are your thoughts here? I mean, I think Red Dead Redemption would be a great choice for a remake in a lot of ways, to be honest with you, particularly if they can make it look and play like Red Dead Redemption 2. I would be fully on board for that. But if it's going to be as shit as those GTA Trilogy remakes, fucking leave it on the shelf, man. Like, no one wants any part of that, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly where I would land with it. You know, I can see, as you described, like a remake of the first Red Dead Redemption in the same way that Naughty Dog are going about the Last of Us remake could be pretty fantastic, you know, putting it into the engine and the sort of gameplay mechanics of the newer game, and just fleshing that out and probably eventually just selling them together. That would be incredible. I guess the lesson that we've learned from the GTA remasters is that they seem to come from mobile ports, essentially, those games, right? And it does feel like that all of that was about putting these older games out onto all platforms now. I would be concerned that would be their focus here, would be to get the original Red Dead Redemption like running on Switch and stuff like that, running on mobile almost, rather than focusing on making it a high caliber PS5 and Xbox Series X game, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so if they did the latter thing and just made it for the new generation of consoles, made it a high-end PC remake, that would be superb and really worth doing. I think GTA 4 is exactly the same in that it is absolutely, it's maybe, you know, the most critically divisive of the GTA games of recent years, but it's absolutely dripping with atmosphere and mood. You know, you feel like you're in New York in that game. You know, it's got a real tone to it. And if they did the same thing that they did with these other remasters and like stripped all of that out, changed the lighting, changed the kind of fog effects and all that kind of thing, and just made it feel like something different in order to make it run on loads of different devices, I think that would be a real misstep. Again, I think a polish up of that game would be totally enough. It will hold up, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, it definitely will. And don't get me wrong, like, I am not the biggest fan of GTA 4. I know that GTA 4 seems to have had a sort of resurgence of late, and I don't know if it's just because the group of people who first played GTA 4 have now sort of grown up a bit, and like that maybe was their first GTA sort of thing, and so they're like have very fond memories of it. But for me, in comparison to San Andreas and Vice City, it's not even fucking close, frankly. However, I understand that it has its fans, and like you said, like so much of that game was just the style of them. You know what I mean? Like those old GTA games. Do you know what I mean? And Vice City and San Andreas as well as GTA 4. Like Red Dead's no different. Like they cannot do the same thing with that. Surely, I mean, it's a PS3 game, so you would like to hope that they would keep it on console, whereas the other ones were PS2 games. So maybe you can sort of I don't know, dumb that down, for lack of a better term, for mobile without too many compromises. But if they were to do that with the original Red Dead, I think that would be a car crash, frankly. So let's hope that they do not do that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's news item number 4. Some gamers have been real dicks this week. And I know that could be said basically any week. And this really is the sort of story I hate reporting on, Liz. I've got to say, this is all just drama, and I just hate that. I just really hate that. But basically, this all revolves around Cory Barlog, who is the creative director at Sony Santa Monica and is responsible for the God of War games. First of all, he hit back at gamers who were harassing one of his female staff members, who was getting sent unsolicited, explicit messages and being, I don't know, harassed again, I suppose, for the God of War Ragnarok release date, which is absolutely insane behaviour. Like, who's sending people fucking dick pics then going, what's the God of War release date? That's madness. Absolute madness. Then, very shortly after that, Return to Monkey Island director Ron Gilbert said that he would no longer be posting about the game due to online abuse and personal attacks, all over an art style, by the way, which I think looks pretty good and is more interesting than the original one. So there you go, I've said that out loud now.
Oh dear, you buried us.
But after that tweet, Cory Barlog again reiterated his desire for the gaming community just to fucking behave and like be respectful towards the devs that make the games that they like. Then it had basically been leaked that there was a planned God of War announcement on June the 30th. A planned God of War announcement that was never announced, to be clear. But whatever was planned for there didn't end up happening, which again resulted in abuse for Barlog and his team, which again he hit back at, and even had Phil Spencer on side, who was replying to his tweets and agreeing with him. Ultimately, this all led to Sony Santa Monica putting out this statement regarding the sort of lack of respect shown by, I have to say, a subset of gamers. Like, I know that most gamers are not like this, but let's face it, there's too many arseholes in this community, and they do seem to be getting louder loose, I have to say.
Yeah, so Sony Santa Monica said, every single person at Santa Monica Studios is working to create a game that we're proud of, one that we hope you will enjoy playing once released. Our fans inspire us, and we understand the passion and desire for more information, but that passion should not be toxic nor come at the expense of any human being's dignity. Let's celebrate our community by treating each other, every gamer and developer alike, with respect.
Yeah, which is, I mean, is a very simple and obvious message that really shouldn't have to be said, because it's just like common human decency just to not be a dick to someone. I don't know what it is about just video games or the entertainment industry at large, I suppose, where a certain group of people just think that it's acceptable just to hurl abuse at people just because they don't like their vision of their piece of art. Their piece of art, not your piece of art, not you complainery man piece of art. But they don't owe you anything. Like, they don't owe you a damn fucking thing. In fact, you should feel lucky that these people get out of their bed and have to put up with your shit all day and yet still want to make video games or entertainment that you enjoy at the end of it. You should be incredibly grateful to these people. Honestly, it just irks me, this shit, so much. It really does. But it all just seemed to come to a head this week, do you know what I mean, around all this God of War shit and whatever, and it was just so bullshit. It really was awful to see.
Yeah, it really was. It did come to a bit of a head this week, and I think that's great to see when developers or publishers or whoever in the space actually speak out and kind of make a point about this, and not just like the statement from the studio here, but with Cory Barlog individually tweeting as well. And the Monkey Island creator, I think his stance, which a lot of people obviously were upset to see him kind of say, well, I'm not going to be talking about the game anymore because of this reaction I've had. But in some ways, I think that's a good and positive reaction for him to take. He could just be like, well, no, I'm not fucking playing this game. You know, if this is how it's going to be, I'm just not doing it. I'll do this my own way. It's a shame for people who want to follow the game, but also, you know, you can continue to support that and support the game ultimately while respecting his stance to not be abused online all the time. It's this thing, it's this perfect confluence of like the accessibility that social media gives you and the weird hierarchy that consumer culture creates, right? Where you said there, like, they don't owe us anything, and they don't owe us anything, but the feeling among people who speak like this and who act like this must be, in my head, that they feel entitled to it, right? They're like, I'm a consumer, I buy this stuff, therefore I pay your wage, therefore I own it and I get what I want. That leads to this horrible behaviour all the time, and you see it across, like you said, right across the entertainment industry. But you think about, like, we used to work in retail, Mark, and people can be total arseholes to your face, never mind just on social media, when they when they don't get the thing that they want because they feel entitled to it. And it's just this horrible part of human nature that we have to try and address in these ways, but it's not going to stop here. And all of this over really dumb shit like a announcement of a release date, you know?
No, this is it as well. Like, whatever was supposed to happen on June the 30th wasn't even announced. They've got annoyed at something that they never said was going to happen. Do you know what I mean? It was just leaked sort of second hand, and then it never happened for whatever reason. Maybe they were a bit on the fence about it in the first place, and whatever happened, they just got pushed, and that's fine. Like, we should never have known about this in the first place to be disappointed about it. You know what I mean?
And it's not even the announcement of a game or anything.
No,
major.
It's nothing. It's just like...
It's the announcement of a date that people are expecting. It's like, it doesn't really matter that much. You can just wait.
No, if you
the
get
date
it
will
this
still
week
come.
or you get it next week, it doesn't matter. If you get it the day before it releases, who cares? It's still coming out on the same day. Oh God, honestly, infuriating, absolutely infuriating. And I have to say, like, I do know that this is a subsection of gamers. Not all gamers are like this. Certainly, I hope that most of the people listening to this podcast are not like this in the slightest. But yeah, just remember, like, these creators are making their own art. They're having their own vision for what they want to create. You can choose to buy it or not. No one's saying that you have to like it, but they don't owe you a game. They don't owe you anything. And you should be incredibly grateful when they make something you like, not be a wee dickhead and demand another one. All right, Lewis, finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout-outs. It's first podcast of the month, and that means free games, Lewis. On the PlayStation Essentials tier, you are getting Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, the Dark Pictures anthology Man of Medan, and Arcade-ageddon, two of which I think are pretty good, Lewis, pretty good. I was actually thinking about buying Crash Bandicoot 4 recently, and I'm super glad I did not.
Yeah, nice one.
And on Game Pass, singular, today you are getting Last Call BBS, Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami, and Yakuza Kiwami 2. Then on July the 7th, you are getting DJ Max Respect 5, Match Point Tennis Championship, and Road 96. Then on July the 14th, you are getting Escape Academy, My Friend Peppa Pig, Overwhelm, Paw Patrol the Movie, Adventure City Halls, and Power Wash Simulator. So there you go.
A mixed bag this month, I would say, on Xbox.
Me too, but the Yakuza games are beloved by many, and Road 96 was one you were interested in.
Yeah, I always thought that looked interesting. I might take a shot at that at some point.
Shout out number 2, Lewis, Cuphead, the delicious last course DLC has finally come out this week. Currently sitting with an 83 on PS4, an 88 on PC, and an 89 on Switch. Currently sitting with an 83 on PS4, 88 on PC, 89 on Switch, and 90 on Xbox. However, PC has by far and away the most reviews, so I would say that 88 on PC is probably the most accurate score, we will say. I've seen more than one review saying that this is just more Cuphead, Lewis, and all of those reviews say that that is a great thing, that it's just more Cuphead, and that is exactly what it looks like. It just looks like more Cuphead. I am very, very excited for this, Lewis. It is very high on my to-play list. Absolutely love it. Love the base game. Cannot wait to play more of it.
Yeah, I wondered if you would have jumped into it over the past week, actually. I was half expecting to come on the call tonight and hear that you'd been playing it. I'm really excited for it as well. I can't wait to get back into that world. I've still got the base game to finish as well. I still had a few bosses at the end that I never
so
finished.
You do.
Yeah,
dude.
I just fell off it because I guess something else came out or whatever and moved away. So yeah, dead keen to see this. We were both saying off air that we've kind of avoided a lot of the coverage of it beforehand just to try and have it as a fresh experience, because it doesn't seem like there's much to learn if you've already played the base game. You know, it's just going to be more bosses and more cool levels and great illustrations. So yeah, can't wait to discover what they've put together, and we were waiting so long for it.
I know, man, and it's finally here. I'm very excited, very, very excited. Alright, shout out number 3, Lewis. Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak DLC has also come out this week. Big week for DLC. Currently sitting with an 86 on PC and an 89 on Switch. It is reviewed very well indeed. Multiple reviews saying that it was as good, if not better, than the Iceborne expansion for Monster Hunter World, which was also very well received. And multiple reviews also saying that it is substantial enough to basically be a standalone game in and of itself. So very good value for money, it sounds like. They've also apparently shipped over 2 million units of the DLC already and 10 million units of the base game, which is insane numbers, really, for a game that I don't think is particularly popular here in the UK or in Europe in general, but worldwide, man. Capcom and the Monster Hunter series is going from strength to strength. It really is.
Yeah, they've really been killing it recently. The last few releases have all landed very well with critics and sold crazy numbers. So, you know, you've got to say hats off to them. It's maybe not our cup of tea, although I've always been kind of interested to try it at some point, just never actually put the time in. I wouldn't know whether to start with a game like this, like the Sunbreak expansion or that kind of line, or whether to jump into like Monster Hunter World. But yeah, amazing that the fans are obviously getting what they want, and that's all. It should matter to anyone, really, you know.
Alright, Lewis, and final shout out number 4, and because I think that there's been a lot of negativity in this episode in particular, I want to say some good things that the gaming community have done. Firstly, SGDQ this week, which is Summer Games Done Quick, which is a speed running marathon that takes place twice a year for charity. They raise a colossal amount of money. This year they managed to raise over $3 million for Doctors Without Borders, which is absolutely amazing. And I know that we've spoken about the toxicity in video games, which there just happens to be a lot of, unfortunately, but I really think that the speedrunning community is great. It's all sort of broken down even within that, like into their own individual gaming communities, and they all sort of have to work together to get to a point where they can run through this game as quickly as possible. Like, it's usually a big community effort to actually get that done, which is a really cool thing to see. And GDQ is a fantastic organisation. They have raised over 48 million for charities over the years. Yeah, thumbs up. All their videos are on YouTube now. Go and check them out. I think speedrunning is fucking insane to watch. It's just something that I don't think I will ever be capable of doing, but I love to see other people break games and get through Elden Ring in 9 minutes or something like that, you know?
Good lord. Nah, it's really cool. I'm not as into these things as you are, but Summer Games Done Quick and, well, all the Games Done Quick kind of series there's always gems to find within that, and particularly if there's a game that you love, you can usually find someone do it in really interesting ways. Yeah, definitely. Think of whatever your favourite game is and then go and find someone who's going to break it to bits. It's very interesting to watch. Secondly, as well, we spoke last week about the devastating decision of the US Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. In response to that, itch.io have done another one of their charity bundles lists. A thing that they seem to have to do more and more frequently these days, which I think says a lot about the state of the world. The proceeds for this one go to the National Network for Abortion Funds. The minimum donation is $10, but you can pay what you like. That's only £8 about here in the UK. For that, you're getting 750 games worth over $3,000. And from our experience of playing these games from the Ukraine bundle list, I can confirm without a shadow of a doubt that it is definitely worth that amount of money. But more to the point, it's just a great way of helping a cause which is in dire need of support. If you feel strongly about this, I would encourage anyone to go and buy the bundle. You're helping a lot of people in potentially very bad and very dangerous situations. And it's a win-win because you get a bunch of really cool games at the same time. Yeah, absolutely. Get out there and support these bundles if you can. I haven't looked at what games are included in this one yet. Like we've said a million times before, it barely matters, but it'd be great to see what we might be able to dive into in future if we pick up this one as well. Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, I am going to pick this up, so I would be happy to pick just a couple of games from this one to do again, definitely. Just to continue our role of playing like really small indie games, because I have enjoyed that. And that might come up in a little while, Lewis, because I think it is time for a beer, and then we'll be back for Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is our play-alongs of Sagebrush and The White Door, Lewis. It is indeed, yeah. So this month, again, we've been playing, as we've sort of mentioned already on this episode, we've been playing through two more kind of smaller indie games that were included in the Itch's Ukraine bundle. And yeah, this month we decided to go for two, I guess in gameplay terms, like reasonably similar games in that they're kind of point and click puzzle adventure games, story-driven games, Sagebrush and The White Door. We're going to kick off the conversation with Sagebrush. It's very slightly the older of the two games. Came out in 2018 from Redact Games, developed and published by Redact Games, who are a company that I wasn't really aware of. They have put out some other stuff, but nothing that had a name that I recognised, so I wonder if Sagebrush is their kind of most known game. What a strange little game, though. So this is a first-person narrative adventure. You're going around this deserted ranch, the Black Sage Ranch, which the game front-loads with the information that this was the site of a suicide cult, essentially, in the early 90s, led by this Father James character. I think that there was information just, as the title crawl or whatever whatever, that this is all based on research into these real kind of apocalyptic cults, and it has very much like, and we'll come back to this a wee bit I suppose, but very heavily inspired by the Jonestown massacre. I felt, it's even down to the guy's name, it's like there's a lot of overlap there between real...
I think that it seems to be like a mashing up of Jonestown and Waco. It feels like to me, do you know what I mean?
Essentially. I mean, a lot of these cult stories are going to be similar. I wonder, maybe this conversation come with a bit of a trigger warning, because there is some really dark material within this, and that is a reflection of how it is based on real world events. It's not based on one story, but it's based on the kind of behaviour and the patterns and the workings of these cult churches or these weird kind of cult leaders. So that's the background of this very cheery, happy game.
Super not
God.
Cheery.
It's
so heavy.
It's so
like
heavy.
When I finished it, the first thing that I said to you was, I finished it in X amount of time. It's really heavy. That was my text to you. It's really, really heavy. Like, really deals with some like dark cult shit, like self-flagellation and, I mean, ostensibly rape and suicide as well. Obviously, I mean, it was pretty bleak stuff, man, I've got to say. Worth saying the style as well of this game, which was a sort of very low poly, sort of early PS1 era, I would say, sort of kind of game. One complaint I would have, the lighting in this game. Didn't like that very much. I had to crank the TV lighting up very, very high. But in reality, like, I'm nitpicking at what was probably a very small team working on this, and if the lighting wasn't quite to my liking, then, like, so what? Yeah. But, I mean, obviously the game is based around its story, and the story, while being dark, was quite a, I don't know, honest, just unreserved, unrepenting look at sort of religious cults, particularly in America where it's set and where a lot of these types of cults seem to have manifested themselves over the years. Not saying that it's an exclusively American problem, it definitely isn't, but there just seems to be a lot of known ones from there. Yeah, and as you said, a lot of parallels to real life cults, because it's rightly, again, that you said that a lot of these things follow patterns and it's always the same thing, and it always comes background to your messiah cult figure just being in it for sex and money. Yeah. Which usually is sex, money, and power, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think drugs as well. I think near the end you find a crack pipe essentially in his chambers.
He's on amphetamines as well. Yeah. Which is also a thing for Jim Jones, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
I also like true crime podcasts, ladies and gentlemen, just in case you're wondering where we're going.
I guess that's a good point to interject. Like, if this kind of story is interesting to you, I think this game is really worth playing. It's short. It's only, I mean, I beat it in about 90 minutes. It's I think you were about 2 hours.
Longer, yeah.
There's a certain degree of exploration to be done, but essentially the gameplay, I mean, the gameplay is nothing to write home about. It's very old-fashioned point-and-click adventure stuff. You're going into buildings.
I mean, it's nearly a walking sim, right?
Exactly. It is. Well, that's very interesting to say that. It is very nearly a walking sim where you're just going around. You find in one building the key to a room in another part of the map that you head over to, and you open that and you find the next clue. And
wee bit of story on
you're piecing together
then
these.
You go into here, then you're going to there, then you're led to here.
Absolutely, yeah. You're getting diary entries and you're getting these kind of tape deck flashbacks to what happened, including one really quite powerful one where the actual moment of the mass suicide is revealed to you, which hasn't been really until you click on that tape deck and you're part of it. Gameplay wise, I think I mean, there's a lot here. You mentioned there the style as well, and I just want to say I think that PS1 style is very deliberate because it is a game that is essentially talking about an event that happened in the early 90s when the PlayStation came out, and it feels like it's trying to ground the player in that world, and also makes you focus on what's actually happening, like what you're reading, and because there's not that much more to see in it. It's you really are being laser focused on the story and on the accounts that the player character and the others around you are kind of giving.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that style, and particularly from that era of 3D games, like the early era of 3D games, it gets a bad rap, and sort of rightly so in a lot of cases, but like using it these days in a sort of more modern setting and a sort of modern low polygon, like I think it can look really good. And I don't think that this game looked bad beyond the lighting, which I wasn't a fan of, but it just had a style about it. It had a striking style about it, and as you said, I think it really grounded it. And yeah, I suppose it does like put your focus on the story. I suppose like a lot of those old PS1 games where you couldn't have like high flying action all over the place, you know what I mean? Because the console wasn't capable of that, so it was more reliant on telling you an interesting story as you go to lead you along.
That's much like the Black Iris that we played a few weeks ago. It uses the limitations of its style really well, kind of makes some of
very
its
similar
points,
style,
but it just it's more focused on that story stuff. I want to make two comparisons around this game. You mentioned walking sims there. This gave me a real sense of Gone Home when I started playing it.
Oh,
particularly that feeling that I think we both had and a lot of people have when they play Gone Home, of the fear that something really bad is about to happen all the time, because it's made fairly clear to you, even though you don't quite understand right at the beginning of the game who you are in this world and how you connect to the events here. And by the end you do, and I won't kind of spoil that, but the feeling that, you know, there could still be some cult members here or something is going to jump out at any point, like that always felt really pervasive in Gone Home, and I think it's here. Certainly in the first few moments as you explore the first building, I was like, oh god, when I turn this generator on and the lights come on, like there's going to be something bad. Something's going to jump out at me at some point, you know. And the other game that I was thinking about, which is more about how the game plays, was Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which is another great walking sim, a game I think we both really enjoyed back in the early days of the PS4 generation. What that game does, similarly to this, is talk about something that happened before, that you're trying to understand why it happened or what your place in it all is. And so it uses that kind of loss as its anchor point, right? This game does, what Sagebrush does, is that it tells all of its story through notes and tape decks and that kind of thing, whereas Everybody's Gone to the Rapture felt slightly more fluid in that you would walk around the area and you would just kind of have the story expressed to you, and you could do it in a much freer way because you weren't being led from building to building particularly. And I don't know if I think that this should have been more like that, but it just was playing on my mind the whole time. I was like, oh, there's slightly different ways of doing this kind of walking sim thing.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying there. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I don't think that necessarily it should have been more like Going to the Rapture or anything like that, and I know that that's not what you're saying, but yeah, I mean it's two different ways of basically doing the same thing. I don't think one is any better than the other. Obviously, this one had a substantially lesser budget, I would imagine, than Everyone's Gone to the Rapture. And I think, they just wanted to go in, they wanted to tell this sort of very heavy, very hard-hitting story about the realities of a cult and what that's actually like, and get out, and that's fine. You know what I mean? I was here for it. Despite its heaviness and despite how dark it was, just very ominously dark, I would say, just throughout, it was a good experience to have. You know what I mean? It's rare that you get an experience quite like that in a video game, I suppose. Yeah. Just a very raw experience of what being in a cult is like, you know?
Definitely. I really enjoyed it. I think it's well worth playing. It's a really interesting game in terms of directly what it's saying to you. It's not an interesting game in terms of gameplay or anything like that, especially in the way some of the other games we focused on can be. It's just like, it is like sitting down and watching a true crime documentary for a while, you know what I mean? It's in that sort of vein, without any of the sensationalism that a lot of that brings. So from that, though, to The White Door, Mark, another point-and-click adventure game. This from Rusty Lake and published by Second Maze, came out in 2020. Rusty Lake, Mark, seem to have a whole series of games also called Rusty Lake, like Rusty Lake Hotel and things like that, I was not aware of at all. I think that they've got like 14 of these games, and it's all a bit of a connected universe, which I read very briefly some people's theories about how The White Door fits into it all, even though it's sort of not directly connected, which is cool. I like this enough, and I'll loop back around to this at the end obviously, but I like this enough to maybe go and check out some of those other games because I think they're all going really cheap just now on Steam. I'm interested to see what else this studio are doing because I enjoyed this, but we'll come back to my enjoyment of it in a minute. The White Door then is a game in which you wake up in a mental health facility, you find out some very basic information about yourself, and you try and put together why you are here and what the hell's going on, and if the doctors behind the door are actually have your best interests at heart, I suppose. It's a strange little game. It's a strange game stylistically, it's a strange game story-wise. What were your overall thoughts on it? What did you take away from it?
I thought it was quite an interesting game. It was sort of like a very, very, very stripped back sort of, I don't know what, I was going to say it was a sort of stripped back Kentucky Route Zero, but I'm not sure I really believe that. It's more just a sort of vibe that it had, I suppose. Like it was just weird, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. But quite interesting all the same. As we were talking about with Sagebrush as well, like it's point and click, there's not really any gameplay. It's about you sort of going through this routine of being in your room and how, but even at that, sort of strange things happen and you're not really sure if that's like a comment on your mental health or whatever, or you're like sort of having semi-breakthroughs as to what is happening with you and why you're there. And it was interesting. I played this on my phone, by the way, I have to say, and you played it on presumably your Steam Deck.
I did. I played both games on my Steam Deck, yep.
Very good. All right, just rubbing it in.
No email yet, Mark?
No. Anyway, Did you use the touchscreen or were you using controls?
For this, I had to use the touchscreen.
You had to use the touchscreen. No, that's interesting. So I also used it playing the touchscreen, obviously, because it was on my phone. This game is 100% suited to that. In a lot of ways, actually, we were talking about it before. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of Gorogoa, as we were talking about off air, Lewis. And that the gameplay is extremely simple. It's just trying to tell you a story in an interesting way, I suppose, which it does manage. I'm not really sure how I felt about, I don't know, the delivery of that story, I suppose. Is that fair to say?
I think it is fair to say, yeah. When I came to be writing my notes about this tonight, I was suddenly like, I don't really know what the story was. I can't quite piece it all together, what it was trying to get at. I definitely, the Kentucky Route Zero comparison, I can understand where you're coming from there. It definitely evolves from a more straightforward story into something that is like aping a sort of David Lynch style about it. It's all manipulation.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It's a David Lynch vibe. It's got a David Lynch vibe about it. That's a better comparison.
It's got like manipulation of dreams. It's got weird characters with animal heads. There's one moment in particular where you're confronted with your kind of own disembodied soul, and it's trying to like merge with you, and it's speaking in reverse in the way that the guy from Twin Peaks from the Red Room like is doing all of that stuff, and that can be a little bit tropey, but I enjoyed this enough to stick with it. I thought that the gameplay is like super repetitive because you're just walking around your bedroom / cell, I suppose, whatever, like the room that you've been locked in by these people and you can't seem to get out of. You do the same tasks again and again, but they sort of subtly change and then quite radically change towards the end once you know a bit more about what's going on. In that sense, it should be really boring, but it intercuts all of that with like flashbacks to what was going on before this.
It was the flashback bits, by the way, that I had the issue with. I'm not really sure that was... So that was the only bit that was narrated as well. Right, and it wasn't to do with anyone's performance or anything like that, but it was just... The gameplay is very, very simple. So, for example, at one point, basically your girlfriend or whoever, your partner, is breaking up with you, and you're sat across the table from one another, and on the left, you're basically getting the thought bubbles, or the voice bubbles, I suppose, of the narrating character and what each of them is saying to one another. And at one point, he'll say, I went to take her hand across the table or something like that, and then you move his hand to up the table like you're doing it. But what would actually have been better in that moment is that if it didn't say that, you did it, then he said, I tried to take her hand and she moved it away. Like the other way around.
I get that.
I think that the game should have made it more obvious that that's what you were supposed to do, and then they didn't say that. So it felt as though you were enacting the story, not the story was just making you act. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that was my only... So again, it's a very minor fucking criticism in the grand scheme of things, do you know what I mean? But I do think that genuinely would have made the game better. It was those parts that I was sort of like, right, okay, which was the explainy parts of what was happening before we got to the White Room. But the actual being in the White Room, I thought was really interesting sort of concept. I liked it. I liked it in concept, I've got to say. I like when games like this experiment, you know what I mean? And that's what this felt like. And I think it was a relatively successful one, to be honest.
Yeah, I would basically agree with most of that. Yeah, I did think that that tension that the game has between being interactive storytelling and also trying to be a puzzle game means that, they maybe start making some of the wrong decisions around what you need to focus on instead of having a really interactively told story the way you're describing there, which I think would have worked really well. It then starts to jam in kind of logic puzzles and some puzzles that were not really, they didn't really seem to pertain to any logic. It just you just had to try stuff until it worked. Like the one in particular that I'm remembering was when you had to tap musical notes that a woman was singing at like a nightclub.
Oh yeah.
And I was just I had absolutely no concept of what I was just tapping that for ages until suddenly it stopped doing it.
I believe you were supposed to match.
I think it was pairs. Yeah, eventually, which in hindsight seems ridiculous to have not picked up on, but it just seemed.
It wasn't obvious. I was spending a lot of time doing that as well.
And I was like, all right, what's happening here? When's this going to end? And then
I have to say, like, I think that when they were doing those narrative bits, they should have focused on the narrative bits, do you know what I mean? And I think that actually flipping those gameplay things, like, so it would be like, oh, and she looked over to the left, and then you'd swipe your finger to the left and her eyes would move. Whereas, like, I don't know, there must have been some other way that you could indicate to the player that that's what you wanted them to do, and then say, oh, she moved the right to the left, such and such a thing happened, do you know what I mean? And you're like progressing the story rather than the story's just making you do a little thing before it continues talking. Do you know what I mean? And I do think that might sound like a subtle difference, but I do think that would actually make a huge impact on the game, to be honest with you. But I think that when you were in the White Room, then we're calling this the White Room, by the way. The game is called The White Door, and the White Room does have a white door, but you are also entirely in a white room.
Contained in this room the whole time.
This room has no colour in it until right at the end of the game. that's where the puzzly bits should have happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is largely where they did, but the narrative stuff should have just been left alone
to kind of unfold naturally. Yeah, I can see that. We're kind of needing to wrap up shortly, but one of the other, I mean, the most striking thing really about this is its style. I think it looks like a graphic novel.
Yeah, it looks great.
Very consciously trying to look like that, both in terms of its kind of line drawn illustration style, but also that kind of quite fascinating split screen thing that it does, where the action will take part in half the screen, so you can move around this cube room interacting with things, but when you, for instance, approach a mirror, the right hand side of the screen or the left hand side of the screen, whichever it is, becomes like the first person view, and so you're kind of seeing both things simultaneously. I just thought that was, again, a really nice way of getting, kind of using the space that they have, like rather than having that be a room that you walk around and moving in and out of kind of different perspectives, it keeps it quite sort of fluid, but it also meant that you felt trapped the whole time, like you were almost never outside of that goddamn room.
Yeah, which I think was the point.
Exactly, exactly that. I think it executed those kind of ideas really well, but it was also just really visually pleasant and quite odd at times to look at.
No, it was great. I mean, I think I totally agree with everything that you said, and I feel as though I've been a little bit negative on it. It's really great. Like, it's a really, really good game. And the fact that you said that they have this whole other sort of adjacent series to this, like, I am like also interested in that now as well. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, I'm totally interested in going and checking that out. Like, this was definitely worth I can't even remember what it was, £2 or something that I spent on the iOS store, and I'm just on the White Doors website right now, and it has a Steam link, and it's actually £1.44 on Steam right now, and it is thoroughly worth it for that, Lewis.
Absolutely, yeah. And just again, testament to how great these indie bundles from Itch have been for the various causes, and we're glad to support those as well. But we've encountered now 4 games that we've really enjoyed for all sorts of different reasons. I'm dead keen that we continue to do this and pick up on some of the other games that are included in these sorts of bundles, because we've discovered some really creative games. Some of them are micro indie, some of them are slightly bigger teams with slightly bigger budgets maybe, but across the board, just really fascinating stuff that maybe isn't getting the oxygen that some of the bigger indies, the indies that really hit with critics, the attention that those get. So I'm really glad that we're picking these out.
Yeah, me too. As you said, I mean, it's been an eye-opening experience doing this, and I definitely want to continue. And while Itch is continuing to help people out there, I'm more than willing to give them my money if this is the experience I'm going to get. So 100% thumbs up there, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That is Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or whatever you get your podcasts, that really, really, really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, that just helps us out even more, and you would be an absolute legend to us. And it is now time as well to announce our new PlayAlong games list, which will be Monument Valley and Monument Valley 2, which are 2 absolutely fantastic little puzzle games which you can play on Steam now as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's just
also on your
PC,
mobile.
Yeah, but yeah, classically made for mobile. Yeah, great little mobile experiences. A lot of people have probably picked this up at some point because it was so huge when it was released. Gorgeous little puzzle games, well worth your time. And both games, I think we said, could be completed together within about 4 hours. Basically, so the 2 together are not a big task.
Exactly. So similarly to what we've done with these shorter games in the Ukraine bundle, we're now doing with these 2 mobile games basically, and 2 Monument Valley games, and they both play off each other really nicely as well. Very, very similar. You'll enjoy them both. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen. And then I think that the month after Loose, we will do a couple of games from the Itch bundle for the abortion fund that we just spoke about in our shoutouts, and I think that's a good way of continuing to do these indie games that are smaller and, as you said, not getting as much oxygen, but that we, I think, are actually really excited to play. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.